right. Hello, everyone. I'm Abby Ratchison from Overdrive's Content Partnerships team. Today, welcome to Overdrive's In the Know. We are going to be hearing about some fantastic backlist titles because we love all books, not just shiny new titles. And we'll be hearing from ECW Press, Annick Press, and the Literary Press Group of Canada, as well as guest authors and editors. A title list will be linked shortly, so feel free to take a look while you're hearing from our presenters. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat for Q&A. Welcome, and please take it away, Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our presentation today. We're so excited to be doing another webinar, another In the Know with Overdrive. I'm just going to start by sharing our slideshow. Sorry, there we go. So who are we? If you don't know us, ECW Press, we are one of Canada's largest independent presses. We've been around for 50 years, and in that time, we've done over 1,000 books. We truly have something for every reader. We do fiction, nonfiction, poetry. Our commitment is to bring you the best writing in every genre that we possibly can. I'll pass it to Annick.
Hello, I'm Zainab Sayeda, Sales and Marketing Associate for Annick Press. Annick Press is a dynamic indie press that has been built on a commitment to literature for youth that reflects the world of the contemporary child. We encourage critical thinking and the development of a child's inner resources so they can become confident, contributing members of the community. We publish compelling, groundbreaking fiction and nonfiction for children and teens, and our award-winning list of books from the past phenomenal 50 years is a testament to that. Thank you.
Amazing. So we're kicking things off with a very special presentation. We have three wonderful authors here to talk to us about their upcoming books. First, we have Laura Bontia, the author of When the Air Sang, which is being released, which has just been released from Annick Press, as well as Larry Grant and Scott Steedman, the authors of Reconciling: A Lifelong Struggle to Belong, coming from ECW Press this fall. And they will be interviewed by Jen Sukfong Lee, author and acquiring editor at ECW Press. So I will pass it to you, Jen.
Hi, how is everyone? I am so happy to be here with Laura and Scott and Larry. I think Larry has to turn on his camera. We can do that. How is everyone? Scott, how are you? Your mic is on. I can see. So I'm asking you first.
I'm great, thanks. How are
Laura,
you?
I'm very well, thanks, and happy to be here with you, Scott and Larry.
Yeah, this is exciting. If you do hear my dog bark, I apologize. She gets really upset when people walk past my house. Hi, Larry. Do you want to turn on your mic? That would be awesome.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hmm.
Also, I should say everybody looks very bookish today, which is great. Very appropriate. So I want to start at the very beginning with both of these books, with When the Air Sang and Reconciling, so that everybody has a nice idea about what they're about. But what prompted you all to write these books? And that's a very general question, but I often feel like there's like a flashpoint, a moment when like a inciting incident that occurs that makes you want to write something. Let me tell your story. Laura, do you want to start?
Sure. So, When the Air Sang is a really special book for me because although it's the second book that I've published, it was the first manuscript that I ever wrote. So, I had been working as a freelance editor specializing in picture books. And then during summer 2020, as we all were, I was in lockdown with young kids at home exploring the backyard. And one day we saw a cicada on the back tree that had just molted. And I had never seen one before. And it was such a magical moment to experience that with my child that I felt like there had to be a story that could evolve from this idea of a fresh new cicada somehow. And although picture books are short, the process is not. So it took me many months to figure out what that story would be and many months more to refine it. But working on children's books and being surrounded by them with my own kids was really that catalyst for realizing that I might be interested in writing them too.
Do you have your kids read this book?
Yes, they have. Yeah.
How do they feel about it?
It's so fun because the one who inspired it is now almost coming out of picture book age. We're moving on to almost middle grade now. But my youngest, who was an infant at the time, grew up to be a real bug lover. And so it's been really special to share that love of insects and kind of see them evolve into someone who could be similar to the character in the book.
Oh, that's really nice. My kid has no interest in my book, so I like to hear it when kids care. Scott and Larry, Reconciling is actually the story of Larry's life, which is quite extraordinary. So how did this book come about? Because there's two of you, so it's a different kind of thing.
Hmm. If you don't mind, I think I should go first, Larry. I was doing some communications work for the university here, University of British Columbia, and they were putting up some signs that had the Musqueam language on them, street signs, Hunkaminam. And they asked me to write something about it. And I thought I should talk to someone who knew more about it than me. So someone put me in touch with Larry, and we met out on campus and we talked for like 3 hours. And at the end, I was supposed to write like 150 words for the website. So I was like, this needs a little bit more time. So it kind of snowballed after that. And I started asking Larry, have you ever thought about writing the story of your life? And yeah, that's how it began.
How did it feel for you, Larry, to share that story? Like
Well,
it's because your life is quite extraordinary. Like for people who don't know, this is a Reconciling is the story of Larry's life, who he had a Musqueam mother and a Chinese Canadian father, and all the changes in Vancouver over all those years. But how did that feel, Larry, to share that?
that was something that began many, many years ago. With about 20 years ago, people were talking to me about you should write a story your book about you, write your story, and got interviewed. Uh, and we did about half a dozen tapes, but nothing came of that in a sense because everything kind of fizzled out. And then when I met Scott on the streets and spoke quite a bit with Scott, and then did some a land acknowledgement at SFU, and finally it was, well, either I do it or I don't, and am I going to do it before I pass away, or it's something that needs to be shared with our children and grandchildren. So that was really a big moment for me that gotta have to do it for the grandchildren.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating to me because this book, which is the story about Larry's life, is also a conversation between Scott and Larry as they visit spots in sort of around surrounding Vancouver that were important to Larry's life, but also important historically, in terms of our journey toward reconciliation and Chinese Canadian history. So I always think that writing is a very lonely business, right? Most of the time I'm at home in my pajamas, just typing away by myself. So you guys actually got to do it together. How did it feel to collaborate this deeply on something that I actually think is a very solitary business most of the time?
Well, the road trips were really fun. Larry and I spent, a number of days just going out and about around Vancouver. And I thought I knew the city, but of course he knows it way better than me, having worked on the docks and worked all over greater Vancouver. Maybe the most memorable one was a trip where we went to try and find where Larry was born. He was born in a hop field at the top of the Fraser Valley. His family were picking hops there. As you know, seasonal work picking fruits is what the poorest of the poor do. You were seeing that in California right now, right? And yeah, of course, the hop field isn't there anymore. It's now a cornfield. But it was kind of amazing to go and try and find that place.
And that was quite an eye-opening trip for me because I did not realize how large the hop field had been around the time that I was born. So it was a really amazing thing. I always thought it was just one corner of Agassiz, but it's like half of Agassiz. So it was,
Revisiting all of those places must have been a real twist for you, Larry.
mm, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, revisiting all those places that must have been a lot of different emotions for you as you were
Well,
doing.
it brought back a lot of childhood memories and youthful memories. Teenager getting to drive up there as a 16, 17-year-old, and it brought back all of those memories where driving for a wholesaler for a summer job and thinking about our grandparents having to live that kind of a life, and yet coming to understand a little bit about how much history our mother carried just from those summer jobs, like going to Agassiz for picking hops and Sardis for picking hops and things like that. So they got to reconnect with a lot of family in that. So I used to wonder how our mother knew so much history when she didn't travel. So it was interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Um, Laura, I want to talk about because family and conversation is a big part of your book too. And like central to your book is Annie and this conversation she's having with her great grandmother about cicadas and the past and the future. So, how important was it for you to write a children's book actually that honors intergenerational relationships, which is not, I'm sure, not how like the children would see it, but like
Yes,
that's actually
totally.
what you're writing.
I feel like I came at it from two different directions. It took me a long time to find the heart of the story, and I really credit my editor, June at Annick Press, with helping me dig deeper into who Annie was as a character. But at the same time, this idea of it being intergenerational was always there because the book is about the periodical cicadas, which we actually don't have here in Canada. I took a trip down a year or two ago to see them come out in the Chicago area. They're the ones that live underground for 13 or 17 years at a time and then come out by the billions all at once each spring. And so when I was thinking about that 17 years going back, it made me think of different generations and what would that mean? So one of my first steps was actually to build out a spreadsheet to figure out, if we've got a 6-year-old child right now, how old would her mother, her grandmother, and her great grandmother have been at various times when the cicadas had been out previously? And I thought that would be a really interesting way to connect this idea of the cyclical nature of the cicadas. But then at the same time, I think a lot of it too is that I live in London, Ontario now, and that's not where I grew up. So in summer 2020, when we couldn't visit family, I was really feeling the loss of those connections and only seeing my parents over Zoom, not knowing if I was going to get a chance to visit my own grandparents again, which thankfully I was able to years later. But being able to represent that closeness in the story, I think was a bit of a subconscious element of wishing that in that time during the start of the pandemic that I could have been surrounded by my extended family as well. And then, of course, it comes full circle in the story because we see the future generations also. And that was something that wasn't there in the original draft. I credit that idea to a very good friend of mine who read through it as we were getting close to the end and said, if the mother was pregnant, then you would have these two different things to be waiting for. And it was one of those magical moments as an author where everything just clicks and you say, of course, that's what the story has always been about. And we just didn't see it until now.
I do enjoy that you shouted out your spreadsheet because I don't think people know that authors do use spreadsheets.
Love a good spreadsheet. Can't do any math in them, but I plan a lot.
I mean, I hate spreadsheets, but I'm like, yes, everyone needs one for their book at some point. It's so interesting hearing you talk about that because I think with both books, there's this kind of sense of like the past and the present and the future, and how much all of those sort of timelines influence each other and how we experience the past and, how the past can teach us how to move forward into the future. Like, was sort of bringing a sense of history to the current day, something that you tried to do with, when the air sang, Laura, like, because I really do feel it. even though
Yeah.
like, it's a picture book. It's not like we're getting a history lesson, but
No, I love that. I definitely did think about that. I grew up with a lot of stories from my grandparents and them taking me through nature. I don't know if I appreciated that as much as I could have when I was a child, but looking back, I have idyllic memories of learning all of that. And so I think being able to look back and see how things have changed, but so many things still are the same and that those cycles continue on was really special. And of course, as a picture book author, I don't do the illustrations myself. So Sarah Wong did beautiful art for this book. And that was really special as well, because what people who don't write picture books may not know is that you aren't dictating every detail. So I had more art notes in this book than others because I had to specify the stages of the cicadas development. But otherwise, it was up to Sarah to develop who is this family? What background characters are there? And then to come up with incredible details, like when we see flashbacks of the different generations' lives, she reflected those as photos, which was something I would never have thought of. So the great grandmother's photo is in sepia tones because it would have been an older photo. And then by the time we get to the mom as a teenager in the 70s, there's a Polaroid snapshot. And you can see those little details that kids might not pick up on, but that just feel so authentic to readers.
I mean, this is the illustrations are beautiful. She did such a fabulous
They're
job on.
incredible.
Yeah. And it's the same thing applies to reconciling to Scott and Larry, like the idea of like the past and the present and the future sort of collapsing so that we can learn from all three things. How did you feel? Like, what was this sense of history? Did you feel a burden to bring the sense of history forward for the readers? Or what did it feel great? Did you love that stuff?
I I actually never realized that I was a historian.
You
Uh,
are.
the things that came to mind about the different stresses that were created with the way that society was operating in my youth, and how long it took to overcome a lot of those emotional things that I didn't realize were affecting my life, and and having to grow up in the sense of two different worlds, actually three worlds, with the Chinese and the Muslim and the Caucasian world that I was living in. So I had to balance all of that with uh, realizing each one had its own set of stresses and traumas and different issues that actually were all the same, but they were seemed so different at the time it's happening, and it took me a lifetime to understand I am who I am and I can't change it,
Mhm.
and I have to talk about it and experience things in my life that I know my grandchildren will never experience, and they have no knowledge of it. So because we don't really talk about my historical background, and thought, well, I've got to be able to leave something behind so that my grandchildren and great grandchildren can have a reference point for my life and the struggles and having to reconcile with themselves because they have to go through the same issues in a little different form, but these are the things that affect our lives, and that's something that the feeling of accepting oneself is a great feeling. So that was part of it, as a major part of it. So telling my
That's
stories.
interesting that Larry uses the verb reconciling there because he used that when he was talking to me, and that's why we used it as the title of the book because it's not just reconciliation between Canada and Indigenous people. It's a very personal process for Larry of accepting who he was and the fact that his father was an immigrant too, and came from China, 14-year-old with some money hidden to pay when he arrived because he had to pay the head tax. Um, and reconciling all those things within himself is partly what the story is about.
I think this is a lovely place to end, accepting oneself and using the personal to look outward at making the world a better place, which sounds pretty trite, but I mean it. And I think we all mean it. So I want to actually thank Larry and Scott and Laura for talking with me today, for all of you people in this Overdrive event. And I think that's it for us. And I can throw this back to Elham. There you are.
Thank you all so, so much. That was such a wonderful, lovely conversation. Thank you so much for moderating, Jen. You're just such a delight to listen to and to get to talk to. And especially, of course, thank you to Laura, Scott, and Larry. If you are interested in reading any of their books, you are welcome to shoot an email after the show to myself or to Zainab when the Air Sang, like I said, was released this spring. And Reconciling, I'm so excited to be able to show you the first in-print copy. It just showed up at the office today. And so be sure to add those to your TBR. Everyone who is attending the webinar today will also be entered into a giveaway. And so one lucky winner will win copies of both of these books, as well as some other fabulous goodies. Goodness. So now I am very, very excited to welcome our friends from the Literary Press Group. If you don't know, the Literary Press Group of Canada is a nonprofit organization that is committed to supporting Canada's independent literary publishers and promoting Canadian literary culture. They do this by providing critical business, professional development, advocacy, and networking services to their member publishers. And the books that you'll be seeing from them today represent just a few of the incredible Canadian indies that they represent. So I will pass the mic to Tan Light and Lauren Peruzza.
Thanks so much, Elham. Hi, everyone. We're thrilled to be back at another In the Know presentation. It's such a delight to present alongside all of these folks, and also so wonderful to listen to authors this afternoon. So thanks also for that intro presentation. Could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. My name is Lauren. As Ellen said, I'm the engagement manager at the Literary Press Group of Canada, and I'm joined by our sales manager, Tan Light. Our summer sales and marketing assistant, Colleen Cade, is also on the call. Hi, Colleen. Next slide, please. The backlist theme of this presentation today couldn't be better timed. Like Annick and ECW, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year as an organization. And of course, we are celebrating with books. In this case, 50 iconic books from the LPG membership. So we pulled from this specific list to share with you all today. Next slide, please. First up, we have Dream of No One But Myself by D.M. Bradford. This is an extremely winning poetry collection in the sense that it won or was a finalist for 6 major literary awards, including winning the A.M. Klein Prize for Poetry and shortlisted for the Griffin Poetry Prize, the Governor General's Literary Award, the Gerald Lampert Memorial Award, among others. This is a genre-defying debut collection that combines prose poems, self-erasures, verse, and family photo cut-ups to examine the poet's own triracial and troubled family origins. In writing this collection, Bradford provides a literary alternative to the trauma memoir, one where the pieces aren't all picked up in the end. Bradford lives in Montreal, where they work as a writer and translator, and the Montreal Public Libraries Network is their local system. Next slide, please. Next up, we have Who Has Seen the Wind by W.O. Mitchell. This is a 75th anniversary edition of this Kenlick classic, rendered new with beautiful full-color illustrations by Canadian-Ukrainian artist William Kurelik. This is a classic coming-of-age story about a young boy growing up on the Canadian prairies in the 30s, learning about life and death. Quill and Quire ranked this book number 7 on their list of the top 40 Canadian novels of the 20th century. And this particular edition won the Pub West 2023 Book Design Awards Gold Medal and features a foreword from Frances Itani and afterwards from W.O. Mitchell's son, Orm Mitchell, and daughter-in-law, Barbara Mitchell. Local library systems for this one, Frances Itani is located in Ottawa, and Orm and Barbara live in Peterborough. Next slide, please. The Clarion by Nina Dennick is a runaway hit. This debut was longlisted for the Giller Prize in 2023 and a winner of the Trillium Award. And in that year of 2023 was named a Globe and Mail 100 Best Book, a CBC Books Best Canadian Fiction, an Apple Books Best Canadian Debut, and Best Book of the Month for September of that year. The narrative alternates between Peter and Stasi, two adult siblings who live in Toronto. Peter is a trumpet player who works as a line cook, and Stasi is desperate to climb the corporate ladder. Their relationship is loving yet strained. Small vignettes of their daily lives intermingle with their infrequent meetings and check-ins with each other. While they're in different places in their lives, they share feelings of frustration and incompleteness at their careers, their unrequited loves, and a desperation to connect. This book follows in literary realist traditions of writers like Mavis Galland, and I found it personally reminiscent of Sally Rooney's Intermezzo, if you wanted to point readers who love that towards a homegrown Canadian option. Nina lives in Scarborough, Ontario. Next slide, please. Last from me is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, a dangerous trans girl's confabulous memoir by Kai Ching Tom. This book came out in 2016 and continues to make waves today. It won the Writers' Trust of Canada Dane Ogilvy Prize for LGBTQ Emerging Writers in 2017 and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award for Transgender Fiction. It was also a pick in March 2019 for actor Emma Watson's book club called Our Shared Shelf. This is a semi-autofictional coming-of-age story of a young Asian trans girl who is a pathological liar and kung fu expert. She runs away from her parents' abusive home in a rainy city, and striking off on her own, finds a true family in a group of larger-than-life trans femmes. When a violent attack hits her family, the protagonist joins a vigilante gang of her fellow sisters to fight back against the transphobes. Can't think of anything more relevant in these times. It's one of Metonymy's first books. They just celebrated 10 years as a press. And Kai is currently based in Toronto, but did her degrees in Montreal at McGill and grew up in Vancouver. Now I'll hand things over to my colleague Tan, who will take you through our next 4 picks.
Hello, everyone. The first book I'll be presenting to you today is Chorus of Mushrooms by Hiromi Goto, who identifies as queer and a Japanese Canadian and hails from Victoria, BC. It is a powerful narrative of 3 generations of Japanese Canadian women living on the prairies. The Ottawa Citizen calls it a complex and compelling story, and the Globe and Mail adds that it contains passages of breathtaking beauty. When it first came out in 1994, it won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Best First Book and was a co-winner of the Canada-Japan Book Award. In fact, Chorus of Mushrooms was so popular, it became part of the Kobe University entrance exam. It's now available in the 20th anniversary edition, which includes an afterword by Larissa Lai and an interview with Hiromi Goto. New West Press is a Benetech certified press, and so this book is fully accessible, and it's also available as an audiobook from ECW's Bespeak Audio imprint. Next slide, please. Next up, I have The Junta of Happenstance, which is Tolu Olorobuntu's debut poetry collection. Tolu has gone on to publish 2 more award-winning collections with PRH. The winner of the Griffin Poetry Prize and the Governor General Literary Award for Poetry. It was also nominated for the Gerald Lampert and Raymond Suster Awards. And according to the jury for the GG Award, Olorobuntu's voice in The Junta of Happenstance is at once thoughtful and authoritative. It is metaphorically rich and lyrically surprising. His language travels through history and myth to speak to today and engage with a future transformed by new understanding. Tolu is a Nigerian-Canadian poet and a physician who's based in Calgary, and his publisher, Palimpsest Press, is Benetech certified as well. Next up, for your middle grade readers, we have Jack and Mary in the Land of Thieves, written by Newfoundland's Andy Jones and illustrated by Darka Erdelji. In this tale of adventure, Jack is duped and enslaved by an underhanded sea captain. Mary disguises herself as a man and sets sail to save Jack and restore their fortunes. Quill and Quire raved about how Andy Jones skillfully captures the rhythms of oral storytelling and uses colorful dialect words throughout. In the Land of Thieves, i.e. Newfoundland, is described as lousy with robbers, rowdies, thieves, preachers, bully boys, hooligans, scofflaws, scullies, skeets, and sleevings. Jack and Mary in the Land of Thieves won the BMO Winterset Bruno Family Award for Children's Literature and is also available as an audiobook narrated by Andy Jones himself. And finally, we'll close out this incredible list with North End Love Songs, the debut collection by Métis author Katerina Vermette. Winner of the 2013 Governor General's Literary Award for Poetry and the Lena Chartrand Award for Activism in Poetry, North End Love Songs launched an incredible career. Katerina is the author of the adult novels The Break, The Strangers, and The Circle, creator of the Pemmican Wars graphic novel series featuring a girl called Echo, and for kids she's created the Seven Teachings series. Katerina lives in Winnipeg, and North End Love Songs is just newly available to libraries via Overdrive. Next slide, please. So we want to thank you again, ECW and Overdrive, for inviting the LPG to be here today. You can visit allitup.ca to stay in touch or to browse the other backlist gems in our 50 Books for 50 Years collection.
Thank you so much, Tan and Lauren. We love having you be part of these presentations, and I also highly, highly recommend that everyone check out All Lit Up for their fabulous content and just their amazing list of member publishers. So now we're moving on to the main event, title presentations. So what does it mean to do a Canadian backlist spotlight? There are new books coming out every single week, and I know that we're all always looking for the next big book. But today we really wanted to take some time to highlight for you some of the amazing books that are already out to let you know that sometimes the book that you're looking for, that you're craving, already exists. And I'm going to pass it to the lovely Zainab from Annick Press to kick us off.
Thank you, Ilham. And just before we begin, I would want to proceed with a note on our digital editions. We have made accessibility a priority with our digital editions for years. And all of our fixed layout EPUBs, as well as our audiobooks adapted from picture books, include image descriptions for a well-rounded and memorable reading experience. And with that, we can move on to the next slide. Thank you. Ours to Tell by Eldon Yellowhorn and Kathy Lowinger. Eldon Yellowhorn is a well-renowned, highly respected professor of archaeology and indigenous studies, and Kathy Lowinger is the author of many award-winning children's books, including What the Eagle Sees, Sky Wolves Call, Turtle Island, and of course, Ours to Tell. As you can see, this book is a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection, and it's a wide-ranging anthology that shines a light on untold Indigenous stories as recounted by Indigenous creators themselves. In this book, 16 Indigenous creators relate traditions, accounts of historical events, and their own lived experiences to highlight the struggle and triumphs lived by Indigenous people and the impact that these stories have had on the history and on the culture of this country. Profiles included are Indigenous poet E. Pauline Johnson, acclaimed novelist Tommy Orange, brave warrior Standing Bear, and poet and activist Rita Jo as well. And each profile is accompanied by rich visuals from archival photos to contemporary art. Ours to Tell brilliantly spotlights Indigenous life, past and present, through an Indigenous lens. This book is available now as a web PDF and is coming soon as an accessible EPUB as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is hashtag Not Your Princess. It's a backlist title by Lisa Charleboy, who is the editor-in-chief of Urban Native magazine, which focuses on pop culture with an Indigenous twist, and Mary Beth Leatherdale, who writes, edits, and consults on books, magazines, and digital resources for children and for youth. In this anthology, Native women demand to be heard. It's an anthology of powerful voices of Indigenous women from across North America. In the mainstream media, usually what we see are stories of abuse, humiliation, and stereotyping. But this book counters that by voices of passionate women making themselves heard and demanding change. It's sometimes angry, it's often reflective, but it's always strong. And the women in this book have given teen readers an insight into the lives of women who for so long have been made virtually invisible. It's available now as an accessible EPUB and a web PDF as well. And next slide, please. Thank you. We have Walking Together by Elder Dr. Albert D. Marshall, who is from the Moose clan of the Mi'kmaq Nation, and Louise Zimania, who is of French, Canadian, and Hungarian descent, who's a professor and researcher. Walking Together is a best-selling, award-winning introduction to Itapmunk, which is the gift of multiple perspectives, also known as two-eyed seeing. And we now have it available in this beautiful bilingual edition that celebrates the Mi'kmaq language and our connections to nature. Elder Albert Dr. Marshall is a leading environmental voice who has brought forward this concept of Itapmunk. It honors and braids together both Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledges and ways of knowing for the benefit of all. The book demonstrates a journey which nurtures a respectful, reciprocal, responsible relationships with the land, water, with plant life, animals, and with other human beings. It's available soon as a read-aloud EPUB, fixed layout EPUB, web PDF, and an audiobook as well. And next slide, please. Thank you. This is Dear Dandelion. It's a backlist title by S.J. Okimo, who's a Nihao and Eastern European multidisciplinary artist. This was her debut picture book, and it celebrates self-love and resilience with one of the most widespread plants, the dandelion. It's both a love letter to the dandelion and a call to love ourselves in a difficult world. It reminds us that we are not defined as how others see us. And this book follows the young protagonist and the dandelion throughout the seasons, where we are reminded that we are resilient, we are healers, we are funny, and we are loved. SJ combines her gifts as both author and illustrator in this beautiful, endearing book that is bound to be loved by both children and adults. It's available now as a fixed layout, EPUB, and a web PDF. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is Astronautical by Brooklyn Stormy, who's an artist and illustrator based in Peterborough, Ontario. And the synopsis of the book is that a century ago, a planet called Zephyr exploded under mysterious circumstances, and ever since, generations have been living out their lives on the remaining floating planet chunks. And there are two brothers, Max and Larry, who with their father delivered goods around the galaxy on their spaceship until their father is suddenly kidnapped by the planet Breaker. But luckily for the brothers, a couple of stars with a ferry boat business offered to help them on this rescue mission. But when Max sustains a life-threatening black hole injury, his little brother has to step up and take care of his chronically in charge big brother. With lots of imagined science, kind of sort of real science, and absolutely real science, this book is going to be a hit for every reader, which this is basically a middle grade graphic novel. It's available now as a web PDF, but it's coming soon as a fixed layout EPUB as well. And you can see all the glowing reviews it has received already. And moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is The Wolf Suit. It's a backlist title and instantly recognizable for many viewers, I'm sure. It's by Sid Sharp, who's an artist from Toronto who makes drawings, paintings, and comics. This was their debut comic, which is also a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection. It was featured in the Best of the Year list by New York Public Library, School Library Journal, and the Globe and Mail, and many others. With humor, darkness, and insight that's reminiscent of John Clason and Edward Gorey, Sid Sharp turns the idiom wolf in a sheep's clothing on its head. It's an award-winning, hilarious, touching graphic novel debut about the pressures of conformity and conquering fear by finding community. And it's the perfect contemporary folktale to press into the hands of anyone who has ever felt the need to pretend to be someone else in order to be accepted. It's available now as a web PDF and a fixed layout EPUB as well. And also Sid Sharp is an Eisner Award nominee. moving on to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is When the Air Sang by the charming Laura Bronte, whom we've just heard from. This book is a marvelous magical story in the words of David Suzuki. It's a gorgeous picture book about a young insect enthusiast who learns about the ever mysterious cicada and how our curiosity about nature never truly goes away. And as Laura mentioned, Annie is tired of waiting for the cicadas to finally appear every day when they show hints of an upcoming arrival, but they seem to be taking their own sweet time coming. And as Annie's anticipation builds, she's joined by her great-grandmother, then her grandmother, and her mother, each of whom has their own cicada story to tell. This is a lovely picture book, perfect for amateur bug lovers, and readers will be swept away by their own curiosity as they explore all the fascinating things about nature just outside their own doors. It's informative. It has got expert-reviewed back matter on cicadas, which provides further context on these fascinating creatures. It's available now as a fixed layout EPUB and web PDF, and is coming out soon as a read aloud EPUB and an audiobook. And next slide, please. We have Why Are You So Quiet, which is a backlist title by Jacqueline Desforges, who's a Pushcart-nominated writer whose work has appeared in The Puritan, The Fiddlehead, among others. She's also a winner of the 2018 RBC Pen Canada New Voices Award. And this book is an emotional story set in our world where it often seems like nobody is listening. This book celebrates the power of silence. We have the protagonist, Myra Louise, who is asked by her teacher, by her classmates, and even her mother wonders, why are you so quiet? And in search of an answer to the tiresome questions that nobody will stop asking her, she invents a listening machine. And she ponders over if the raindrops or the crickets or the dryers at the laundromat can tell their reasons for being quiet or making noise. She finally becomes interested in knowing the answer, that there is no answer at all, because Myra Louise comes to realize that all she really needs is someone to listen alongside her. This book champions introversion and the value of being a listener, a thinker, and an observer in our increasingly loud world. And we would all do well to remember that the world has lots to teach us in its silence. It's available now as a fixed layout EPUB and a web PDF. Our next slide, please. Thank you. This is The Biggest Smallest Thing by Sarah DeWall, who's a Canadian writer and teacher residing in Sioux Center, Iowa. She has taught music, art to kindergarten, from kindergarten through grade 5, and creative writing workshops in elementary, middle, and high schools as well. This book is a STEM-packed celebration of outside-the-box thinking, which is set during a school science fair. It's perfect for fans of Added with Scientists and centered around a school science fair. And as the day of the symposium arrives, readers will love discovering the scientific surprises behind the Sunnyside Elementary School students' projects. From lemon meringue pie to boogers, it emphasizes how fun STEM can be and how creativity can help answer big questions in the classroom and beyond. This book is available now as a fixed layout EPUB and web PDF, and is coming soon as a read aloud EPUB and an audiobook. And the next slide, please. This is 48 Grasshopper Estates, also by Sarah DeWall. It's a backlist title. And the book is basically about a little girl who uses imagination and inventiveness to spread friendship through her community. But will she be able to find a friend of her own? That's the main question. With a diverse cast of characters, Sarah DeWall's whimsical debut. This was her debut book, which emphasizes the power of imagination and finding companionship where you least expect it. This book is full of imagination. It's a whimsical picture book that emphasizes the power of imagination, spreading kindness, and of course, finding friendship. It's a great picture book text with several applications, creating things to giving away, and it emphasizes on being a maker. It's available now as a fixed layout EPUB and a web PDF as well. And with that, we are done with the Annick site. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Zainab. I always love hearing about the really beautiful and unique books that Annick publishes for kids of all ages. So now I'll be presenting a few titles from ECW. Like I said, ECW, we've done over 1,000 books, and so the titles that I'll be presenting today really only scratch the surface of the incredibly deep backlist that we have, but I hope that you'll find something for you. Oops. So the first book I wanted to talk about is No Good Asking by Fran Kimmel. When I was putting together this list, because we are looking at older titles, I wanted to show that again, the book that you've been looking for already exists. So I wanted to find books that are incredibly relevant to our situation today. With this, I wanted to start on a really happy light note and present a book that reminds us that people can be good, and really no one is better for that than Fran Kimmel. No Good Asking is a profoundly moving and deeply human story about healing and our ability to heal one another. Published in 2018, the novel follows Ellie and Eric Nyland over a Christmas holiday that changes all of their lives, them and their two children. They've just moved back to Eric's childhood home, looking for a fresh start, but things aren't looking good. The family is just too isolated from one another, and they're kind of falling apart. Then one night, Eric is out in the middle of the frigid cold, and he finds Hannah, the little girl from across the street, wandering in the streets. When he discovers that bad things have been happening in her home, the Nylans decide that they can't send her back, and so they reluctantly agree to give her a place to stay over the holidays. But they soon discover that the only thing harder than letting Hannah in might be letting her go. This story is so lovely and so loving. In other hands, it might have become a little bit melodramatic and sappy, but the incredibly nuanced and realistic characters that Fran has created really elevate it into just a tender, heartwarming story. You can see that the book was praised by both Library Journal and Kirkus, but Booklist loved it as well, and they highly recommended it. It was also shortlisted for the Alberta Library Awards George Bunyet Award in 2019, and also longlisted for the Relit Award in the novel category. It's also one of our best-selling ebooks of all time, having sold 15,000 units digitally and counting. While it is a very Christmassy book and we're in the dead of summer, if you are looking for something a bit more seasonal but still having those very heartwarming vibes, uh, Fran recently released her second novel with us, Cattail Lane. It just came out this spring, and it's another heartwarming story about ordinary people struggling and then coming together in the end. It's got romance, it's got second chances, it's the perfect summer read. But I would actually recommend in this hot, hot summer that you read No Good Asking first to remind you that winter comes again. The next novel I wanted to talk about is The Annual Migration of Clouds. This is a really important reminder about the importance of community in all of our lives that asks really deep and vital questions about what we owe each other. Set in post-apocalyptic Alberta, Annual Migration of Clouds follows Reed, a young woman who lives in a community that's just starting to kind of build itself back up after the climate disasters that took them out. Reed has recently been accepted into a university, which is kind of the last vestiges of civilization. And so she has to decide if she wants to pursue a better opportunity for herself, or if she has to stay, or if it's better for her to stay and help her community rebuild. Kind of complicating her decision, Reed is actually a host for a parasite that influences its host's decision making. So even as she's questioning what's best for her, Reed has to question her own mind and wonder if any decision that she makes is truly the right one. Uh, not to pick favorites, but I have to admit that The Annual Migration of Clouds is one of my favorite books that ECW has ever published, and honestly might be one of my favorite books, period. Preemy is such an incredible writer who writes with clarity and incredible insight, but also deep emotional heft. And you can tell by some of the glowing praise that it received on screen. Um, when it was first published in 2021, I would call Preemie a rising star in SFF, but by now she's firmly cemented herself as an SFF master. She's the author of 13 books and has won or been nominated for every sci-fi and fantasy award that you can think of, including the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize, the Aurora Award, which Annual Migration of Clouds won in 2022, the Nebula Award, the World Fantasy Award, and the British Science Fiction Award. And her books have appeared on best of lists in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And if that doesn't convince you to read the book, just know that it was initially intended to be a standalone, but it's so good and fans loved it so much that they asked for a sequel. And so we brought out the second book, We Speak Through the Mountain, in 2024 and are releasing the third book, The First Thousand Trees, this fall. So you'll definitely want to read or listen to the audiobook before diving into the second and third book. If you're looking for thoughtful, thought-provoking, and hopeful sci-fi that will leave you with so many things to think about and just dying to talk to your friends about it, this is definitely the book for you. Next, I think if we're talking about what we need to see more of in the at this moment in time, we definitely need more refugee and migrant stories. It's so important for us to hear from people who are being targeted and victimized, but to do so in a way that is humanizing and doesn't just romanticize the horrors that they experienced and also the dream that they might have achieved coming to North America. My Road from Damascus is just that book. It's Jamal Saeed's 2022 adult debut, though he had already co-authored one book about his experiences of in the Syrian Revolution, 2020, sorry, Yara Spring, which was published by Annick Press. Before being invited to Canada as a refugee in 2016, I can't get my years straight today. Jamal Saeed spent 12 years as a prisoner of conscience in Syria. He was never charged with any crimes. These were purely thought crimes. And he spent a total of 12 years in prison. But this book is about so much more than Jamal's time in jail. Jamal's story is really serious story. With this book, he wanted to capture the history outside of the history books, the stories of ordinary people who find themselves caught in big historical moments, and you really see these parallel narratives running throughout the book. Despite this dark subject matter, this book is funny, it's poetic, and I cannot overstate how beautifully written it is. Jamal is an artist and a poet as much as he is a political activist, and the translator, Catherine Cobham, did such an incredible job capturing the musicality of the Arabic language. You can really hear it in the stunning audiobook, which Library Journal particularly praised, calling it an outstanding, often musical performance that deserves comparison to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning in its ability to find the beauty of human connection in utterly inhuman conditions. The story, of course, has a happy ending. Jamal and his family are safe now, but I would argue that this ending is, or the story is ongoing, as this fall, ECW is publishing Jamal's adult fiction debut, Princess Nye and Other Stories, a collection of incredibly stunning short stories that he actually wrote while he was in prison. Again, just a testament to the power of art and literature to uplift and save us. Next, I wanted to talk about Denison Avenue. This is a story about the price of progress and who gets left behind as societies try and surge forward into the future. Denison Avenue is a book like no other. It tells the story of the elderly Wong Cho-sum as she tries to cope with the death of her husband by walking through her Chinatown neighborhood, collecting bottles and cans. What she finds is a neighborhood that is radically different than the one she remembers. And so now she has to struggle with two losses, the loss of her husband and the loss of her home. On the one side, you have Christina Wong's stunning and experimental poetic novella. Spoiler alert, it will make you cry. And then when you flip the book over, you have Daniel Innes's gorgeous textless graphic novel that allows you to follow Wong Cho-sum on a walking tour of her neighborhood. As you can see, on each page, you see Wong Cho-sum as she walks through the neighborhood, but you also get to see it in her memory just to get a real sense of how much the world around her has changed. This is a book that is deeply rooted in Toronto, particularly Toronto's Kensington Market Chinatown neighborhood, where both Christina and Daniel live, but it could also stand in for any city that's been overrun with development and gentrification. And honestly, we've been shocked and delighted to hear how people from all over have resonated with this book. It's a universal story at its heart about grief, ageism, and the price of progress through the eyes of some of those who have been left behind. Next, the new masculinity, because we definitely need more books about healthy masculinity. Ask Men editor and non-binary writer Alex Manley has created a guide for escaping the shackles of toxic masculinity. Manley is the senior editor of AskMen.com, where they've seen firsthand how angry, scared, and lonely men are. And so in this book, they encourage readers to push back against the various ways that masculinity harms rather than heals. By breaking down 13 key myths about manhood, readers are encouraged to push back against these toxic masculine myths and critically re-examine their own ideas about what it means to be a man and really replace it with something that's much more healthy. Esquire called the book astute and accessible, and it's just that accessibility that readers of all ages can connect with because really this book is not just a book for men, it's for women, queer people, and parents of boys who are interested in ideas about gender and masculinity and the ways that they can have healthy conversations about what it means to be a man today. And actually, when the book came out in 2023, when we were pitching it to different libraries and festivals, a lot of them were really excited to have events, kind of like roundtable discussions, and meetups that would allow men and boys and people of different ages and gender identities to have conversations about toxic masculinity. Next is Bleed, Destroying Myths and Misogyny in Endometriosis Care. And really to start, I think the best way I can introduce this book is to read a quote from The Walrus, who reviewed the book in 2023. They said, in a climate where abortion and contraceptive access in the United States are more under threat than they have been in 50 years, at a time when nobody can afford to mince words about women having access to the care they need and deserve, Bleed arrives in full force, exposing the raw and isolating experience of living with a feminized disease in a world that doesn't want to acknowledge women's pain. And again, that was in 2023. So really, this book has only become more relevant, more timely, and more necessary. Bleed blends memoir and journalism in a scathing, rage-fueled examination of how we treat and mistreat endometriosis across the world. Endometriosis affects roughly 10% of people who menstruate, which doesn't sound like a ton until you realize that's 190 million people worldwide. And so many of the people that I've spoken to about this book in the years since it came out have said that either they struggle with endometriosis or they know people who have. So honestly, if people everywhere are affected by this, and you probably know somebody who needs this book too. Despite this sort of universal nature of it and the debilitating pain that endo patients go through, the biggest hurdle that they struggle with is just getting diagnosed. And Tracy was one of those people. She fought for almost 25 years to get a diagnosis and the care that she wanted. And so in this book, she aims to expose those medical failures and investigate why they persist after all these years. But Bleed is not a self-help book, or a how-to manual on living with endo. It's a deeply researched, evidence-based medical expose that is, again, timely, relevant, very authoritative. There are 25 pages of endnotes to prove that Tracy knows what she's talking about, and there is science to back this up. It's also accessible, empathic, and very inclusive because Tracy knows that misogyny affects Black bodies, minority bodies, plus-sized bodies, and trans people differently. Like the Walrus said 2 years ago, we really can't afford to mince words about women's access to care, and Bleed is exactly the book that we all need to kind of like get us angry and get us worked up and get us to push for a change in a system that has let us all down. And lastly, I wanted to talk about, again, at this time, we definitely need more trans voices. And so I wanted to present My Body is Distant by Paige Maylott. This is part trans woman coming out story, part queer romance. It's a memoir that explains the way that virtual lives and fantasy lives and reality can seep into our real life and teach us things about ourselves. In the 1980s, Paige discovered the game Zork, and it sparked a lifelong love for video games. In her before life, Paige was exploring her authentic self and her sexuality via virtual realities and games like Second Life that allowed her to be someone else. On the one hand, she was dealing with a cancer diagnosis and an imploding marriage IRL, and on the other, she had this fairy tale romance online. So the question became how to take this carefully curated computer life and bring it into reality. This is an incredibly intimate and deeply vulnerable memoir about authenticity, belonging, self-love, and honesty, and about how our fantasies really tell us something deeper about the lives we want to live. And again, as trans people come under attack, we all know that hearing from vulnerable and marginalized people is one of the easiest and most effective ways to build empathy and connect across experiences. So just quickly before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about ECW's audiobook program. It was mentioned a little bit earlier. Bespeak Audio Editions is ECW's audio imprint that aims to bring the best of contemporary Canadian literature to the world in audiobook form. Some of the titles that you heard about from the LPG are Bespeak titles, and you can see just a few more there. Definitely check out our website to find the full list of titles that we published in audio. And I just wanted to quickly mention a few of them, like Casey, the work of Casey Plett. Casey is a multi-award-winning author and assistant professor of creative writing at Ohio University. If we're going to talk about bringing Canadian trans voices to the world, we have to mention Casey's work. Her work has been praised for its powerful realism and the truths that it reveals about what it means to be a trans woman today. The novel Little Fish and her short story collections Dream of a Woman and A Safe Girl to Love have been highly praised for just the incredible beauty of her writing and also the realities that they bring to readers about what it means to be a trans woman. As again, like part of the Bespeak audio imprint, we're so excited to be able to bring this Canadian talent to new readers around the world. And finally, some nonfiction for audiobook lovers. Every publisher has their tiny book series. ECW has the Pop Classics, and Windsor-based Biblioasis has the Field Notes series. This is a series of nonfiction titles that explore timely issues of public interest from experts from a range of backgrounds and disciplines. In fact, Casey Plett has written one for them called On Community. These two, On Property and On Risk, are two incredibly informative, deeply philosophical books that look at property and policing in Canada, but also in the US. And On Risk looks at our relationship to risk, especially in a post-COVID world, and what it means to make calculated decisions. These are short, punchy, very informative, very thoughtful audiobooks that we're really excited to be able to give people the chance to listen to. And so that's all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us and giving us the chance to bring you some of the best Canadian books. Again, this is just a really small sample, and we hope that you will dive a little bit deeper into the world of CanLit. If you're interested in any of these books or just want to connect with us in general, our contact information is here. We'll send you the slideshow, but you also have a list of titles that were presented that Abby shared in the chat. Please do sign up for our newsletters, find our books on NetGalley, and feel free to reach out to us anytime. Thank you so much, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.